Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Jim, who is an intermediate photographer from Pennsylvania. Jim shot this with a Nikon D70, effective focal length of 105 millimeters, and exposed the file at ISO 200 f5.6 in 1/125th of a second. Jim says that he was at a local garden and they were draining one of the ponds, and this was part of what they had discarded. He said he was really drawn to the scene as he was looking at it. He got the feeling of an old Art Deco painting. He said the background leaf looked very metallic to him, had a metallic sheen, and that really drew his eye. One of the things that I love right away about this image is color. I'm really drawn to color in my own work, and this is a fascinating image to look at if we wanted to talk about basic color theory. You really get a sense of two color pairs, one from the printer's color wheel, green and magenta, and then another from the painter's color wheel, yellow and violet. And those two color pairs are sort of shimmering back and forth across each other. You have a lot of varieties of green, almost a primary green in some places, and kind of an OD green that moves towards yellow, and then sort of a magenta or burgundy that moves in some places towards a dark version of violet. It's just really beautiful the way those two color pairs are playing out here. I also really enjoy what Jim pointed out, which is the background leaf and the sort of metallic feeling that it has. And I just really love the simple juxtaposition of the soft lines and shapes of the flower for most of this as a subject matter, and then this much harder edge, almost the feeling of a grid in the background. A really powerful juxtaposition. So there are some other things here to me that are really beautiful. I love the way the background leaf right in here is pushed up, so you do get a lot of hard edge of feeling from this in terms of the structure, particularly in here, sort of the center part of the leaf and this ribbing. But then you have this really beautiful kind of wave feeling that comes back and echoes the movement above the flower. I love the dynamic movement of this line out of the corner and the way it leads up to the flower. Sort of beautiful bookending here with the violet and sort of burgundy feeling at the bottom and the top, kind of bookending more of the feeling of yellow-green in the middle, and really beautiful quality of light for a very simple subject like this. Just a real soft light that has a little bit of dimension to it. I get some sense of direction of the light coming in from the left to right. You can see more shading over here, so you are getting some dimension, but it's very, very soft, and I think that goes really well with a shot where you're trying to show a lot of intricate detail, and a more complex lighting pattern might compete with that. So many things to like here. When I think about a perfect world variation for this image, the main thing that I think about is the top of the flower here. Our eye is drawn to the areas of highest contrast, and for me, not only is this physically the area of highest contrast, we're going to talk about the difference between light and dark. It also has a lot of visual weight to my eye because most of this as a subject is very, very soft. Then when we get to the top, you get this broken edge feeling. It's almost like broken glass, and that adds even more weight to an already very weighty subject because of how bright it is relative to everything else. And what happens for me is that even when I'm down in sort of the quieter areas of the image that are more about really simple sort of juxtapositions and very rich color, I keep getting pulled up to this. There are a couple of different ways if we wanted to change that we might go about doing it. We could try to turn it down. So many different approaches to do this. One way that we could do it is just go into adjustment layer area and go to curves, get the target adjustment tool, see where we are very high on the curve. Some of these areas, if we looked at the color histogram, may even be clipped in that color, but very high up here. So I would want to pull down from very high on the curve, and then I'd go back to layers. I'd change this to luminosity blending mode because I don't want to saturate that color, which is what's happening right now. It still looks too bright. A lot of times a quick shortcut that I'll do if I'm inside of Photoshop is, instead of going back in and messing with a curve, is just real quick copy that curve a few times. I'm always wanting to sort of overdo changes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the mask on this adjustment layers with black and then come back in. I always want to have more adjustment than I need. And so one quick thing that I could do from here is just shift click on this bottom layer and then go to layer, group layers, and just group those 3 layers and then add a layer mask. uh, that's not how you add a layer mask. That's how you add a blank layer. um, Add a layer mask. There we go. Command delete on a Mac, Control delete on a PC to fill that mask with black. And to get myself back to where I started, hit B for the brush tool and go to a very low opacity, 5%, and then come in with a small brush here, and I would want to paint in the areas that aren't already shaded. And I'm doing this work in a very, very rough way, just doing it sort of quickly. You're seeing that become muddy in there. It's just becoming gray because there's so little information to start off with. We could fix that. I'm not going to take the time to do it. I could get some yellow back in there, but I just want to go ahead in a rough way now and paint in there so we can turn that weight down. If you just get back from the monitor, as I turn that change on and off, if you see how that feels differently. And to me, I start to get a sense that with that area going darker, that it starts to be balanced by some of these ideas in here, and it starts to play off of them, and even the top of the flower can blend in more with the overall design. That's just my take on that. So that would be one thing to do, is to turn it down. And now I just want to throw this away. The other thing to do here would be to come in closer. You know, when I'm shooting in the field these days, I think about light almost always first, even before I go to shoot anything. I'm just sort of always considering the light. If I'm photographing people, right there with light would be gesture and expression. I know that I can, if I'm coming in and shooting people close, I can do so many different things and get those right. But if there's no sort of light in terms of energy and gesture and expression, that a lot of times I'm going to have just a blah photograph. One of the really interesting things to me about this image of this flower is it is a great example of a really beautiful gesture. If you just look at the stem of the flower and also gestures, they're playing off of each other. I think about light. I think about color second. Color is one of my favorite things. I'll think about that a lot of times before I even think about camera position. Then I do think about camera position, and a lot of times I'll think about giving myself a lot of choices when it comes to camera position, because I've figured out that I'm a very, very poor editor of my own work in the field. Looking at the back of my camera, I'll think about extraordinary camera positions, so not just the same old thing. And then I think about repetition. So much of the time I am going for unity, and I know that repeating or echoing or rhyming is a really easy way to create a sense of connections with subjects that are different. And I also think about layers of story. What are the ways that I can create multiple dimensions of story for the viewer? And what's interesting is those are the things that I think about when I'm editing in Photoshop. And you can, in effect, change your camera position even inside of Photoshop. And you can do that using the crop tool. It's one of the most powerful tools inside of Photoshop. I see some variations of this image where the top is cropped away. In addition to the real high contrast to the top of the flower, as much as I sort of like this hard diagonal playing off of the wave down here, it cuts off the top of the image in some ways for me. And I like some variations where you come down to just somewhere right in here, just where the top of the blossom starts. And now there are several different things that I like. To me, the juxtaposition of the flower against the background leaf plays out in a way that's a little bit more powerful, a little bit more dynamic now. Instead of that bookending of the warm and with the cool in the middle, you now have sort of a gradient that moves from the warm up to the yellow-green. You now have another juxtaposition in terms of top to bottom, which is the softness of the wave here and the hardness of the ribbing at the top. And just simpler to me in a lot of different ways. And you can see that this is opening up at the top, so it gives the viewer a chance to imagine what is up there. Most people have seen the blossom of the lily pad and water lily, and so they can imagine, they can finish the image, but without that the finishing of the image literally potentially creating an imbalance in the rest of the design of the image. Now to me, colors play out in a way that are simpler, and to me in some ways the background of the leaf has become more abstract, so I can start to imagine even other things besides a leaf connected to a water lily. When I look at that background image, just potentially starts to suggest other things in a way that the more literal version doesn't. Really powerful image to start off with. Would love to hear your feedback about the critique today. I want to say a huge thank you to Jim for sharing this image with us. It's just such a great subject matter, beautiful quality of light for this subject, really beautiful colors, beautiful juxtapositions of shapes and qualities of line. I want to say a huge thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again real soon on the Mindful Eye.